County 911. I have been dispatching since I was 19, been in public safety for about 2 years prior to that. And today we are going to talk a little bit about something that is very near and dear to me and something that I feel like we in public safety do not talk about enough. And that's going to be setting boundaries. So today we're going to focus on the importance of setting boundaries. We're going to talk about how to maintain those boundaries, and then we're going to do some exercises that help us practice setting boundaries. So to start off with, what are boundaries? So boundaries are something we should all be pretty familiar with, at least in a physical sense. So in your little chat box, just go ahead and write out some forms of physical boundaries that we would be familiar with on a regular basis. Yeah, so I'm seeing a lot of boundaries that are don't touch me, don't eat my french fries, no personal space. These are all excellent examples of boundaries. And some physical boundaries that we deal with on a pretty regular basis too are things like jurisdiction lines. You have county lines, you have state lines, we have fences in our yards, we have district lines for, in my center, we have district lines for EMS jurisdictions. So we're all pretty familiar with boundaries in like a physical sense. But in this context, we are going to be talking about boundaries as a separation of ourselves from the things that weigh us down. So think of it like you are walking along in a field and you see all these little rocks laying down on the ground. And you've got a little basket to put your rocks in. But instead of having criteria to pick up your rocks, instead of picking and choosing which ones that you wanted to pick up, you just start picking up all of them. Every single one that comes your way, you pick it up and you put it in your basket, and you put it in your basket, and you put it in your basket, and you put it in your basket. Eventually, your basket is going to be too heavy to carry. So when we talk about setting boundaries in this sense, what we are talking about doing is separating ourselves from the heaviness, from the weight that is not ours to carry, from the burdens that we are not meant to hold. So why should we set boundaries? The biggest reason that we need to set boundaries is they are a form of self-care. Setting boundaries allows you to internalize what you're not responsible for and what you are. And they also help you make sure that you are adequately taking care of yourself so that you can take care of other people. You can't help anybody if you're not helping yourself first. And we'll dig in a little bit more into this as we go through. So when we talk about setting boundaries, there are a lot of different ways in our lives that we can set boundaries. The first place that I encourage people to start is setting boundaries within ourselves. We can't expect other people to respect the boundaries that we set if we don't set boundaries ourselves and uphold our own boundaries. So setting boundaries for yourself can be things like, I'm not going to entertain this negative energy in my bubble or in my circle. I am not going to think these negative thoughts about myself. It can even be things like, I'm going to go to bed at this time, even if I don't want to, because I know that I need this much sleep to take care of myself. And like we said before, boundaries are a form of self-care. We can't help other people if we're not helping ourselves first. And it's okay to make yourself a priority. This is my little disclaimer as we shift into boundaries in the 911 center. Don't do anything that's going to get yourself sued. Please, please don't do anything that's going to get yourself sued. We can set boundaries at work. We can set them in two different ways. We have the ability to set boundaries with our callers to an extent and our responders. I have a very dear friend who worked for a secondary department instead of like a primary PSAP. She had the ability to say, if you were going to talk to me like that, you're going to yell and scream and swear at me after I've got all of the information and everything that I need and I'm sending help, I'm going to disconnect on you. I'm not going to sit and listen to you talk to me like this because of the type of situations that she was dealing with. Some of us in a 911 setting can't always set those kinds of boundaries. We all know that people in crisis typically are not their best selves. And we often get the worst out of people. We get negative attitudes, we get all of the names, all of the whatever they want to throw at us in that moment because they are having a hard time. So don't go back to your agencies and say, well, Hannah said that I could hang up on this person if they cussed me out, because that's not what I'm saying. We're not responsible for other people's actions to an extent, but when we are in that seat, if we give advice and they follow that advice, we have the potential to be liable for it. So just act within your policies and don't do anything that's going to get yourself sued. And then don't come back and say, well, Hannah said I could do this, because like I said, don't get yourself sued. The other people that we can set boundaries with in our 911 centers are our coworkers and the people lateral and above us. Think coworkers, supervisors, admin staff, people like that. And these boundaries look more like taking time off when you need time off, not overextending yourself on projects or 18,000 shifts because they need a seat filled. Management's job is to fill seats. That's what they do. They say, okay, I need this many people to make this work, and that they are going to do what they can to find people to fill those seats. Our job is to understand when we cannot be somebody that helps extra fill those seats. When we talk about doing extra and doing in the center, I'm going to get up on my soapbox for a little bit here. We sacrifice the quality of our work for the sake of quantity. Burnout is something that we wear as a badge of honor, as a badge of triumph in the 911 center. We work weeks upon weeks upon weeks upon weeks, and we brag about it. We say, well, I worked 8 shifts in a row. Well, I worked 10 shifts in a row. Well, I only worked 6, but I alternated between nights, days, and swings. And in any other place, people would look at you like you're crazy, because we're crazy. That's not healthy and that's not okay. But because that is the culture within 911, that is what we put ourselves through. We do it for the sake of saying that we helped, for the sake of saying that we filled a seat and we were there. But we can't help anybody if we're not taking care of ourselves and if we are not producing quality work. Everybody has a point. They have a number of shifts that they hit, and then the next one, they're just about done. Your patience starts to decrease with callers, with responders. Your attitude can be a bit more pronounced on the radio or on the phone. You find that things just aren't coming as quick as maybe they usually would to you, or you are slower to make calls that you would normally be able to make quickly. Your quality in work decreases. By setting and maintaining boundaries around the amount that we work and how we take care of ourselves when we work, we can ensure that we are consistently putting out quality work. We can ensure that every time we come in, we're refreshed, we're rested, we're prepared. We are everything that we need to be ready for our next shift, our next rotation, our next whatever it's going to be. You are more creative when you're rested. You're more likely to think out of the box. Your muscle memory moves a little bit faster. You can process faster. You can make decisions faster when you're rested. Focusing on quality over quantity as well can help with retention. I have moved agencies a couple times now. A lot of the reasons that I've moved agencies is not because of the work itself. I love the work itself, but because of the environment that I was in. I was a person in a seat, and that was it. It didn't matter where I was mentally or how I felt or what I was doing outside of being in that seat. If you help focus on the quality of the work that your employees are putting out, and you help make sure that they are taking care of themselves and they are doing their best and putting their best foot forward when they come in by supporting the boundaries that they're setting, then you will see an uptick in retention. A lot of people that leave, that's what they're looking for. They're looking for agencies that care about themselves and that care about their employees and that care about the people in their seats as telecommunicators, as people, not just as a butt in a seat to answer a phone or to talk on a radio. It's also a liability concern to an extent. If you have somebody that is very overworked and you understand that they are that overworked and they are that tired and they make a mistake, that opens you up to liability as well. And again, like I said before, don't get sued. We don't want to do things that get us sued. Suing is not good. So rest, take time that you need, and make sure that you are coming in prepared for your shift, for your rotation. So, what does setting boundaries look like? On the board, I have some examples of boundaries. They can be used for different things. We talk about no, and no being a boundary in and of itself. And we're going to get to that just a little bit later. No isn't always appropriate. Let me rephrase that. No isn't always the most appropriate for certain situations, for certain settings, especially in a professional sense. So I've put some up on the board. You are welcome to write them down, take a picture of them. I think my email is attached to my profile if you want the email copy with all of the pink clouds and fun, weird shapes that I found on Canva with it too. And just hold on to these, stick them in like the little back pocket of your brain so you have them for later when you need them, and pull them out anytime you're put in a position where you want to say no, but no probably isn't the most effective or respectful thing that you could say. So, with these, we are actually going to do some exercises and we are going to practice setting boundaries. So, you can write them, and I'm going to give you a scenario, and then you're going to practice setting the boundary for that scenario, saying no. So, you can put them in the chat bar on the side. If you want to get a piece of paper and write them down, get a piece of paper and write them down. If you want to say them out loud to yourself, or just say it in your head, however you want to do it. But I highly encourage you to participate. When we practice setting boundaries, the more it's just like anything else you do. The more you practice it, the easier it'll be as you need it. So the first scenario that we are going to do is you are coming off of a 6-shift straight rotation, all day shifts, 6 days in a row, 6 12-hour shifts, and you are exhausted. And all you want to do is go home and sleep and be off for the next 2 days before you have to come back in. And your shift supervisor for the oncoming shift calls, and they say, Hannah, or whatever your name is, we had somebody call out, and you were the only person that we have at the moment that we could get to come in. Can you come in? You don't want to come in. It's not healthy for you to be in there right now. You've just spent 6 straight 12-hour shifts there. You need some time to decompress. How are you going to say no past just saying no? Okay, so the next one that we're going to do is somebody is coming to you and they want your help on a project. You know nothing about the project. They want you to not just help with it. They want you to spearhead this project. You don't know a single thing about it. Nothing. No information. It's a topic you are completely unfamiliar with, but they want you to still participate. And that's just not something you feel comfortable doing. How are you going to say no? Okay, so the next one that we are going to do is a little bit harder. It's something that you really want to be a part of, something you are passionate about, something that you would love to do, something that comes around on a regular basis. But this time, while it's here, it's just not something you can take on. Your plate is too full. It's the holidays, you're traveling with your family, your kids, your pets, whatever. And it's not something that you want to sacrifice anything else to be able to take on. What kind of wording do you use? So I hope this exercise helped open your eyes a little bit and kind of gave you some practice at being able to say no in different ways aside from, or expand, not just aside from, expanding beyond just no, no, thank you, and really give you a chance to come up with some other ideas for how to set boundaries, especially if it's not something that you are comfortable doing or something that you do on a regular basis. These can be good little tidbits to hold on to pull out and use as you need them. I'm just going to leave this up here for a minute and then we'll talk about it. I want you to read it. I want you to take a big, deep breath and read it and let it resonate just a little bit. And just think about this for a minute and just burn this into your brain, into your heart, wherever you need it. You do not owe anyone an explanation as to why you can't do something. Whether that's, I don't want to do it, whether that's, I can't do it, whether that's, I'm not comfortable doing it. Say no professionally, but you don't owe an explanation. You call out sick, you may owe a doctor's note, but not an immediate explanation, not a guilt trip, not whatever is going to get thrown at you. You can simply say no, no, thank you, however you want to say it, and just be done. Your life and what you have going on in your life is not information that everybody everywhere has to have all of the time. You can just keep it to yourself. So once we set these boundaries, there are a couple things we need to do to maintain and enforce them. 3 tips here on the board. One of them I see is being mentioned a lot in the chat on the sidebar, and that no is a complete sentence. So I'm going to skip around a little bit and we'll start with that one. No absolutely is a complete sentence. No, not today. No, thank you. However you want to do it. Like I said on the last slide, You don't owe somebody an extended list of reasons why you don't want to do something. It might just not be their business, and that's okay. The next one is being consistent. Remember, people will push your boundaries, whether that's intentionally or unintentionally. Sometimes people may not know that the boundary is there. Sometimes they'll still know it's there and they just don't like it. And they will lean on it and they will push on it. Your job is to be consistent and to uphold those boundaries. The more you do it, the easier it'll be. It's going to be hard. It's going to be uncomfortable, especially when you first start doing it. But it was hard and uncomfortable when we took our first 911 calls. I thought I was going to be sick the first time I talked on the radio. I was so nervous. My anxiety was so bad. And now I do it like it's second nature. We all do to an extent. And this falls in that same category. It's hard to start, but once you get into it and the more you do it, the easier it'll be. And then, if all else fails, set physical boundaries, set physical safeguards. We sometimes lapse in our consistency when we forget that things function without us. And that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes. But the way that it was explained to me when I was working on this, and the way that I like to explain it, is my 911 center functions when I'm not here, when I'm on my off days, when I'm on vacation. It functioned before I got here, before I got hired. It'll function after I retire. I am not the physical piece keeping everything above water at the moment. If you are not the physical piece keeping everything above water at the moment, if you are not the main character, as one of my friends likes to say, screen your work phone calls when you're off. Plain and simple. Or don't check your work email. Set an out of office message. Refer them to somebody else. Don't just completely ignore the concerns, but refer them to someone else. Make sure that you are taking care of yourself too, and setting up those physical safeguards to help you take care of yourself. Now, with that, I want to talk a little bit about what setting boundaries doesn't look like. Setting boundaries is more along the lines of, I'm going to be out of town this week. If you email me, I will not see it until I get back. It's not, don't email me because I'm not going to be here to see it. It's, or things like, if you text me after 9 p.m., that's fine, but you're not going to get an answer until after 7 because that's my time frame. That's my boundary. I'm not asking you not to do this action, but just understand that this is going to be my reaction to it. We can't control other people's reactions, only our actions. Setting boundaries is not easy. I can sit here all day and talk to you about setting boundaries and tell you all these little tips and tricks and give you all the different boundaries that I use on a regular basis or that I know people that use. And you will go and you will set them and it will hurt. And it is hard. And setting boundaries, not just professionally, but in your personal life, which is also a place that we need boundaries a lot of the time, is hard. People can sometimes misconstrue setting boundaries as that you are pushing them away, that you are being mean or being weird or distant or whatever you want to call it, when really all you're doing is protecting your peace and taking care of yourself. And it's not easy, but self-growth never really is. People are going to push against boundaries as you set them. They are going to teeter-totter on the line of your patience, and they will stick their foot over the line that's in the sand just to see how far that they can get with it. And that's where this consistency really comes back into play. We have to be nice to an extent, but also be consistent in those boundaries. Different people have different goals, different outcomes that they want to achieve. And it's natural for people to push against things that don't line up with their goals or that feel is different than their goals. We talked before about managers filling seats. That's their job. One of their jobs is to make sure that you have enough people to keep your center functional, to keep your center running. And so they may push some and be like, are you sure you can't do this today? Or however they want to word it, however they want to say it, because that's their job. That's their goal that they have to achieve. Our job is to make sure that we are continuously upholding the boundaries that we set and we are not letting them push too hard against us. In cases like this, you are not responsible for thoughts, feelings, or actions. And this is another one we're just going to leave up here for a minute. Take a deep breath, burn it into your brain, burn it on the back of your eyelids, tattoo it on your wrist, whatever you need to do. If you get nothing else out of this session today, get this, understand this, bounce it around inside of you, whatever you need to do, stick it in the back pocket of your brain. Make sure that you understand this and you know this thoroughly and that you believe this. We have the ability to almost co-opt things that aren't ours and hold on to things that aren't ours to hold on to, especially in this field. We take responsibility for understaffing when it's not ours to take responsibility of. When you are a line telecommunicator, we bring home difficult calls that you did your best on, and there is nothing else you could have done. And we still say, this happened because of me, when this did not happen because of you. This can be applied to just about anything in life. Just about. Oh, I am so sorry. Hold on 1 second for me here. Here we go. I'm sitting in the conference room at work, and apparently the lights are motion detector. Like I was saying, this can be applied just about anywhere in your life. We're responsible for our reactions, but not other people's. And this is important for us to remember. When we talk about setting boundaries, I've done this presentation a couple times here. I think this is my third time doing it. And if you've presented before, you'll understand. And for those of you that have not presented before, I'll explain a little bit more. You critique and correct presentations each time that you do them. You find something that works really well, you like it, you keep it in, or you come up with a great idea of something and you add it in, or you get feedback on something and go, hey, that's a great thing to talk about. Every time I've done this presentation or I've done something along the lines of boundaries, I hear a lot about this, and I like to call it the pendulum swing. So when you don't have any boundaries at all and you start setting boundaries, you can set too many boundaries in the name of setting boundaries, if that makes sense. So you start setting boundaries around things that maybe don't inherently need rigid boundaries. You cut yourself off from everybody all of the time, even when you need support. You say, I'm going to avoid all conflict forever as long as I can in the name of saying that's a boundary. That's not productive. Neither of those things are. You are still human. You still have to engage in conflict even when it's uncomfortable. You still need support from family, from peers, from coworkers, from whoever you get your support from. Setting too many boundaries can be just as harmful as not setting enough. So when we talk about using our no on a regular basis and we start working on that, Be mindful that you're not saying no to things that you want to be a part of or that you want to enjoy doing. Be mindful of your yeses as well as your nos. When I was doing the research for these presentations and I was reading all of the articles and going through the classes and doing a lot of introspection and talking with my therapist on setting boundaries and how to put that into practice in my own life, I came across this list. This is a list of things called your boundary rights, and we're going to go through each of them. And I think it's really important that we remember these in our day-to-day life. So I have the right to say no without feeling guilty. You don't have to be guilt tripped. You don't have to give an 18-year-long explanation as to why you don't want to do something. You can simply say no for the sake of saying no and be done with it and not feel bad about saying no. You don't have to feel bad about prioritizing yourself or about taking care of yourself because you are equally as important as the people that you take care of. And you can't take care of other people without taking care of yourself. You have the right to be treated with respect across the board. It's a little gray area when you start getting into 911, but outside of call taking, like I said, back to policies, out in your day-to-day life and in your experiences and your conversations with your coworkers, with your supervisors, with your admin staff, with your mom, your dad, husband, wife, partner, kids, you have the right to be treated with respect, even in difficult conversations. You have a right to make your needs as important as others. We've talked about that off and on throughout this entire thing. Don't feel bad about taking care of yourself. Don't let anybody make you feel guilty about taking care of yourself. Your needs, your rest is just as important as your ability to give back to your community. You have a right to be accepting of your mistakes and of your failures. This one was really hard for me because I am the world's worst perfectionist. Hands down, 100%. The worst, absolute worst. And I didn't understand that making a mistake or failing was not the end of the world. I thought every little thing that I did wrong, explosions. And the sun was going to come crashing into the planets, and the rings would fall off other planets, and the oceans were going to dry up, and the continents were going to split. Like, end of the world level perfectionism here. And my first trainer that I had in 911 used to say to me, Hannah, did you kill anybody? And I'd say no. And he'd say, did you get the right people where they needed to be? And I'd say yes. And he'd say, well, then it's a learning experience. And that's what we're going to look at it as. And then he'd sing Frozen to me and Taylor Swift to me because Let It Go and Shake It Off. It made sense. You can learn from your mistakes and from your failures. The world doesn't have to explode. You don't have to let your world explode. And then finally, you have a right not to meet others or your own unreasonable expectations of yourself and of you. When I come into work once a week, I sit down and I make a list of the expectations that I have for my week. I make one big list, brain dump all of it, put it all right out on paper. And then I sort through that list and I make two more lists out of that one. And I say, these are reasonable things that I can do. And these are not reasonable things that I can do. And it helps me separate what is actually achievable for myself and what is not. You don't have to meet unreasonable expectations. You are still human. You are still perfect. You are still human. You are not perfect. You are going to make mistakes. And that's okay. We learn from them and we move forward from them. And finally, how do we know if they're working? What's the point in doing all of this, going through all of this hardship, all of this ache, if we don't even feel like they're working? What does it look like when you set boundaries and they go the way that they're supposed to? Because, like I said, it's going to hurt. And hurting makes it hard for us to see if something is going the way that it's supposed to. Within that, you will find peace. There will be peace and there will be responsibility. Instead of doing what you do for other people, instead of working for the sake of filling a seat, or instead of running all over Kingdom Come to make so and so happy, or to do this so and so can do that. You understand that you do this for you. You're here because you want to help people, because that's who you are. We're helpers. You begin to focus more on your goals instead of meeting other people's goals, big ones and little ones. And then you recognize that other people's actions are very often about themselves and less about you. Like I said before, we can't control people's actions, only our reactions. When we recognize that we can't control people's reactions or people's actions, we can focus on our reactions. How we are going to respond. What are we going to say? What are we going to do in response to that? You'll feel committed and you'll be able to prioritize the way that you need to prioritize, but you're not going to be overwhelmed all the time. You're not going to consistently feel like you're being pulled in 18 million different directions every single day of your entire life. There's still going to be periods where you feel like that. There's still going to be times of busy and times of stress and times where you just go and go and go and go and go and can't stop. But it's not going to be a lifestyle. It's going to come in episodes and in spurts. So that's all I really had for my presentation. If anybody has any kind of questions or anything, I would love to be able to answer them for you, or do my best to be able to answer them for you.
Excellent work. Excellent work. That was awesome. Everything that you were saying as you were going through this, I was watching the chat, and people are just like, "You're calling me out." Like, I know, like, everyone is going through something, and I wish that there was more people talking about stuff like this when I was in dispatch, because I know I had issues during that time as well, where was like, can you cover the shift, or can you do this or that? And I would just say, yeah, yeah, sure. And I would never say no.
Mhm.
And, a lot of times people would say, you just want the loot, right? And like, no, it's not about the money. It's the fact that I don't want to be shamed. Like, I don't want people to be like, oh, this dude doesn't ever want to help. So
Yep.
I would take it on, and on and on, and I would be dying later, and crying in the corner at home when I'm by myself, because I'm like, why did I do this? But I really didn't have, there's a lot of us, really don't have, or during my time. It makes it sound like it was a long time ago, but I didn't have anybody really to turn to be like, dude, I don't know if I really want to do this, because everybody else too was constantly saying yes. Like, no one ever said no. Like, we were just doing it. And
Yep.
I loved this session because yeah, those boundaries are definitely needed. And even now, like, now later on, I've gotten way better with it, to be able to say no to certain things. And man, does it feel good to say no sometimes.
Mhm.
That stress
Absolutely.
goes away. So I want to look over here at the chat really quick. So Amanda here says, "What a fantastic presentation! I appreciate you taking on this subject. It's so hard to do this in a healthy way. You rock! Great job. This is a hard lesson, but so needed." And it is a hard lesson, and it's something that we definitely need to look at more. I mean,
And
for yourself. No, go ahead.
a lot of like when I speak on stuff like this in
Hmm.
particular, it's something I mentioned in the very beginning that it's something very near and dear to me. The reason it's very near and dear to me is because having no boundaries in the center took me out, all the way out. I was done. I walked away, and I didn't think I was going to come back. So it's very nice to be able to say, "Hey, I suffered through this really difficult thing and came back from it," and then to be able to share with everybody there's a light at the end of this tunnel. You don't have to just be stuck in the dark feeling like this forever. It's really nice.
How long did it take, I guess, in between that, as you're saying, it took you out, you weren't sure you were gonna come back, and then you came back. About what was kinda like the time frame there?
So from the time, okay, it's a whole story. So just bear with me here. So
Of course, yeah.
in 2021, I was working for two counties
Mhm.
at one time, full time, one county part time at the other, but I was pulling full time hours. I got into a car accident in March of 21 that took me out for 8 weeks. And when I came back in, I realized exactly how much being there was hurting me in both aspects because up until like I was forced out, everything that I did revolved around 911. I was 911. I was a telecommunicator and there was nothing else to me. There was no Hannah. It was just 911.
Wow.
So that really kind of started the journey into okay, what's the solution to this? Because obviously this is a problem.
Mhm.
I ended up leaving in December, left my center, decided I'm done. Beginning of December, end of November. I was like, I'm done, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. Unfortunately, that's not how calling works. Learned that the hard way. And it took me 4 months of working a dead end job in the public sector that I hated. And I sat in an interview for an insurance company, and he said, "You have the opportunity to help people doing this." And I was like, "Well, that's a load of bull. That's not, no, no, that's not what this is." And I called my training director back for the center that I'm at now. And he had told me in the very beginning that if I ever wanted to get back in, give him a call and they'd help me get back in. And I've been here since. So I was all the way out for about 4 months. And it really just kind of gave me some time to reset and come back in as Hannah. And a part of Hannah is a telecommunicator, but my identity is not wrapped up in my job or my profession.
I love that. Excuse me. Definitely, for sure love that, you had to find you.
Yeah,
It sucks that, it took something, and sometimes that happens to us, right? It takes some sort of event, an incident, something catastrophic sometimes, right?
yeah.
To realize certain things and then come back and take a moment to reflect and think, okay, where did I go wrong? Like what is going on here? And for you, you were just eating, sleeping, breathing all 911, and as you said, where was Hannah? Where were you? And now you're back and you're kicking ass and taking names. And I mean, look at all of this. This is amazing. I mean, you'd written that article as well for Now Wonder Women, and just all of it. Just thank you for being so open and willing to share all of this and share your experience for everyone here who is watching live and who is going to come back time and time again to watching the replay as well. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really been a pleasure. I love getting to do stuff like this.
Well, it was also, I mean, in the green room we were talking and stuff, and you're like, I'm kind of nervous. I'm like, you'll be fine, you'll be fine.
Oh,
And as soon as you
terrified.
started,
Absolutely terrified. Like don't let him fool you. Absolutely terrified. Sick to my stomach before we
yes,
do this type thing.
yes. What was amazing too is that like right before I hit the go live, it's like I just want you to know that before I start talking, anytime when I'm doing something, I am terrified. Like, and,
Yeah.
and Anna goes, that makes me feel a little bit better. I was like, okay, good. Because for real, like, I'll be standing there sometimes, like, all right, let's get started. Let's do this.
Yeah.
But is no one would ever know, without us talking about this right now, no one would ever know, because
Yeah.
as soon as you started talking, it was bam, you were in it and you did an excellent job. And so Sarah says to make sure to check out your blog. If you, I don't know if you have the link available, Sarah, but if you can,
Oh,
please
yeah,
throw that
I
in the
can
comments
I
as
can
well.
probably find one. So Sarah is actually who published me before.
Hmm.
I did an article a little while back about boundaries, and it's published through Sarah's website through the 911 Wonder Woman group. So
Hmm.
I will definitely find that and check it out. And y'all should check out like the rest of the really cool blogs that are up there too, because there's a lot of it that will gut punch you, kind of like this one did.
Hmm.
But you can do hard things.
Yes, amazing work. If anybody wants to, get a hold of you or anything, maybe ask questions, how can they get a hold of you?
My email I think is attached to my profile, and if it's not, I'm gonna go ahead and drop it in the bottom
And
here.
just say it might be. So yeah, whenever when you pop in there, when you throw something in there, you can just hover over the little circle, the little picture there, and
Mhm.
so it has some information in there, but it doesn't look like the email, but it's in the comments. So there it is right there.
Yeah,
Again, thank you so very much. And this was an awesome one. Thank you.
thank you.
So we are going to be moving to the next session, and it's going to be the wrap up of day 2 of Dare to Be Great 4 Era of the Headset, and that is going to be with Amanda Whitney, and it is going to be another excellent and powerful session. So we will see you here in just a few moments.